I think the challenges are for us to think about what do we value. I travel around a lot. You know, I live in Colorado, travel around the country a lot doing presentations. And a friend of mine who works in early intervention in the state of Colorado at a very high state level, but he's a parent of a child with a disability, so he has that personal experience, but he works in early intervention. And he called me a while back, and he said, Kathie, he says, I'm getting very concerned. He says, I'm seeing some stuff in Colorado, and he said, I want to know if you're seeing it across the country, or if this is somehow unique to our state. And what he was seeing was, he said, I have, parents who their children receive early intervention services, and he says, the parents are more concerned about services than they are about inclusion. And I said, nope, I'm seeing that across the country. So I think some of the challenges are that we as family members, we somehow value services because that's, once we get hooked into the service system, when our children are diagnosed and say they're getting early intervention services, or maybe our children are not diagnosed until later and then we get into special ed services, but at some point along the line, if we get hooked into the service system in some way, of course it's their job. I mean, the people that work in the service system, it is their job to promote their services. I mean, it is their job to provide those services, I mean, by law. The problem is that we as family members do not have to accept those services. I mean, a lot of parents think, oh, if the state has to provide them, parents also think, I must accept them. And so I meet parents all the time that say, well, I didn't want to send my child to special ed preschool, but I thought I had to, just because, I had an IEP meeting. And it's like, no, you can say no. As parents and family members and people with disabilities themselves, children and adults, we need to know that we can say no. We can say, no, I don't want that service. No, thank you. We can say yes to some, no to some, yes to some, no to some other. We want part of it, but not all of it. And by law, I mean, we can do that. We don't have to, it's not all or nothing. Unfortunately, people think that sometimes. They think, well, if I say no to this, that means I'm not going to get anything. I actually did have the head of a human service agency in New Hampshire several years ago called me, and it was when my book was out in the first edition, and it was the way the format, it was a very thick book. And he called me one day and he said, I ordered your book, I bought it, I read it in one night. I mean, he said, I stayed up all night. And it's like, wow, I wrote the book and I don't think I could read it in one night because it's very thick, very dense. And he said, I want you to come up here and I want you to help teach my staff. And the staff did everything from early intervention to adult services. He said, I want you to help teach my staff how to assist people with disabilities without making them dependent on the system. And it's a real fine line to walk. And I really admired him for wanting his staff to think that way. And so when I was working with, I went up there and I worked with these different departments, and I was working with early intervention, they said, Kathie, they said, well, what'll happen is if we tell parents, well, we can provide, a physical therapy and occupational therapy and that kind of stuff, but really there's more stuff out in the community, that might meet your needs. They'll accuse us. I mean, this is a sorry state of affairs. They'll accuse us of shirking our responsibility. They'll threaten to sue us that we're not giving their children their entitlements. And I said, oh, I have no doubt about that. And, that's one of the problems. One of the challenges is that we as family members, we adopt what I call the entitlement mentality. And so they tell us, oh, your child's, by law, they must tell us, your child's entitled to this, your child's entitled, and then I know, been there, done that. I don't ever accuse parents of anything that I haven't done in my own life, okay? That's what I did. I want more for my son. And so, so this whole entitlement mentality, we want stuff that our kids are entitled to, even if it's not what's going to get us where we want our kids to be. It's like, well, we're entitled to it, so give it to me. Even if it's leading us down this path to segregation and second-class citizenship. I said, so you're going to make a list of what is in your community. You're going to make a list of the natural supports and generic services that already exist in your community. Park and rec, library, YMCA, museums, boys and girls. There's, scouts. There's all kinds of things that would be helpful to our children. And I said, and you're going to say, okay, here's what, get a piece of paper. And on one side you're going to say, here's a list of what our agency can offer you. PT, OT, speech, whatever. And here's what's in the community. And the list is going to be very long. And I said, and so just show them which would you like. And I said, most people are going to say, wow, well, there's really more in my community. So that's what I want.